I was kind of worried about how she would come across within, you know, this whole situation going on in the family, and how naive she was gonna seem, or how, you know, like unprepared or slow in kind of like in reacting to things, how she would take things in. And actually then talking to Rian and then myself, when I got into the script more and more, I realized that it was actually me projecting my surprise, you know, when I read the story, and that she was actually not at all naive or slow. She was actually showing like a huge strength and self-control, and she had her priorities very clear. For me, it's obviously a dream to work with these people. I have had the chance to have scenes with every single one of them. So it's been really exciting and inspiring and really fun. And obviously in the movie, you'll see the scenes are very aggressive and uncomfortable and serious, and, you know, it's just like very nasty sometimes, but you know, it's just brilliant when Rian just let it all improvise and just keep going with the scene and with the arguments. You will go crazy if you hear the things that come out of our mouths. But that's not at all what is in you know, in between takes. We've been in this, well, not in this house, but in the other house most of the time. It has become our actual house, our home, and we've been spending most of the time, you know, in the kitchen or in the basement, in the green room, and we've been going from cooking together to jokes and stories and actually sharing time together, and it's been, you know, like really fun. It's almost like a mirror to the audience, I guess. So I don't know, I think everyone's gonna have a different take on it.
It was so fun. It was one of those scripts that you burn through. You know, it's the type of movies that I like that I don't think get made often enough. It kind of has a really fun quality to it, even though the characters are grounded, even though the story is serious at times. It still feels, I don't know. A murder mystery is just, it reminds me of my youth, like something you would read in school. Certainly the set pieces, certainly the dialogue has a fresh, modern feel to it, but again, I think Rian is that kind of technical director that knows how, once you have all these little pieces of, these bricks that he builds on set, when he actually puts them all together to make a house, it all of a sudden strikes a very fresh, modern style. Well, it's all engine, you know what I mean? It's all stakes, and it never lets you kind of recline for a minute. You know, as soon as you think you know something, it shifts gear on you. So you're forced to be an active participant, and it keeps, it's hard to know who you're identifying with, and that kind of keeps, it just keeps things lively.
Coming to this was just a very easy choice because, one, I'd wanted to work with Rian for a long time, and two, scripts like this just don't come along. I mean, they're once in a blue moon. So, and it was I read it, and I kind of had to read it again almost immediately to think, was that as good as I thought it was? And in fact, it was. And it's just, I'm just so kind of happy and kind of flattered and honoured that someone should give me a script like this and a part like this, because it's such a sort of rich and sort of and sort of I don't know sort of the fact that he's trusted me to do it is just such a lovely thing. You read and there's a security. That's the right word, but he's incredibly, he's very secure within his storytelling. So you don't feel gaps, you don't feel kind of, oh, that's not going, everything's there, everything ties up, everything's connected. The characters are funny and real and just, you read it and you go, I want to play it, I just want to play it, you know, I want to play with this. And working with him is very much like that. I'm not so sure people like this actually exist, but in our world they do, and thank goodness. In the world of the movie they do, and thank goodness, because he, like you said, he's a sort of gentleman sleuth, whatever that is, and somehow has a good enough reputation to be allowed in by the local police force to come and investigate this suicide that's happened. A very famous crime writer called Harlan Thrombey has committed suicide in a very dramatic way, and some things just don't quite add up, and he's invited by someone to come and investigate, and somehow the local police are okay with that. I'm not quite sure how that is, but his reputation is obviously that good, and so he comes in to help them out, help them just sort of keep the case open for a couple of days, just to see that that everything's not, you know, everything doesn't seem in order. So he's there to sort of just try and, you know, square it away. I grew up watching, you know, the Peter Ustinov, Agatha Christie's, and Albert Finney, he played it in Murder on the Orient Express, I think, and just, you know, loved the setup, plus influences from Hitchcock and his take on the sort of whodunit genre and what he thought about it, and it's sort of it's, you know, Ryan's a cinephile, so his sort of influences are sort of from wherever he can get them, and you know, hopefully this is a sort of, well, I know it feels to me, it's like it's a take, it's sort of not so much a fresh take on a whodunit, but it's sort of modernized and given an edge by Ryan, and it's a lot of fun, and hopefully it's a lot of fun to make, and hopefully that will come across in the movie.
You know, rarely do you read a piece of material where you immediately go back to the first page and reread it. And that's what happened to me on this. You know, I've been doing this a while. And I don't know that I've ever reread a script immediately after I read it the first time, except maybe when I got my first job and I was just shocked. And read it to make sure. But anyway, in answer to your question, it's the thing about this material is that it's truly unique. It's at once a really well-crafted, well-written murder mystery and a comedy, and it's the most delicate line to find to perform the characters. This is not like any whodunit you've ever seen, in my memory. The quality of the material, the cast and the production. The production design and the set decorator and the attention to detail is so precise that you show up to a set and you feel like that you are actually part of the unfolding story. There's not an actor that I don't respect and love to watch, and now personally, Daniel is he's amazing because you don't expect him to be such a clown. Michael and I have buddied up pretty good, and I'm a big fan of Michael Shannon. He's a quality person and performer. Jamie Lee, I've known forever, never gotten a chance to work with her. This is a great occasion for us, and now I've gotten to see firsthand why she is who she is, because she's a great actress. Fish Called Wanda was one of my favorite films of all time. Toni Collette can do anything, and she's magical about how she does it. Ana de Armas, what an extraordinary young actress. She's going to be around for a long time. I've always been a big fan of murder mysteries, you know, and especially when they're well written and well disguised, like this one. And I'm just trying to think. Obviously, the Agatha Christie novels and stuff like that, when they're done well, you know, they haven't all been done that well, but I like those. I'm trying to think. You know, there's some great stuff like The Third Man and you know, Hitchcock.
I've had to carry the cast most of the time. They constantly ask me for my advice. You know, when you have people like that, you just try and help them as much as possible because they're stuck. Are you kidding? This cast is like dynamite. It's just, these people are, you know, I'm such fans of these people. They're such amazing actors. It's a joy to work with them. Rian is very prepared. When we did Star Wars, he was prepared. Here he's prepared. And someone who's prepared is calm. And he's always calm. His nature is calm in the first place. But the preparation really causes him to be calm because he knows his stuff. He's got his toolbox, and it doesn't mean he's going to do it, but it's there in case he wants it. He's always soft-spoken, and he always knows what he wants. And he's a wonderful human being.
He's really fast. He's one of the fastest directors I've ever worked with. It's like 1 or 2 takes, and yeah, I think he leaves a lot up to the actor, but I think that, you know, it's not just that. It's not just leaving it up to the actor. It's about he works well with everyone, and he knows how to, you know, get something out of each actor. And I mean, he's great at his job, and I've been a fan of him since, you know, Looper and Star Wars and all that.
Well, Linda's the eldest child, eldest surviving child, and you know, she's like all families. She's married. She I think many of us put up with family members. We put up with our family members. I think we all love each other. I think everybody has a lot of feelings about each other, but it's sort of a normal family, which is, I think, why in the midst of a sort of stylistic whodunit, at the root of it all is a family. I was a cheerleader in high school, and I feel like that's my job as a person in almost everything I do. It doesn't matter what it is. I believe I'm that in my family. I try to be that in the work I do. I love my job. I love crews. I love making movies. I love the privilege of this, the fun of it. It's fun. It's an amazing job. And I do like being that person who loves it, right in the center of it. And in our movie, I ended up living in the kitchen of the house that we shot in and became very close with Charlotte, whose house we shot in. And she's the sort of Linda of her family. And so I ended up just staying with Charlotte in the kitchen for 2 months. And that was also, this kitchen is the center of a family. And that's where I ended up naturally. And so I think people saw that, like that's where I became the sort of center of that, because I was in the kitchen cooking during the day. It's fun because he is clearly a filmmaker who knows exactly what he wants. He doesn't shoot anything he doesn't need. He's very clear. He's very enthusiastic. He's very clear about what he wants and will help you get there if you're not there. But for the most part, he delights in what he's doing, and he delights in the work that is being done by his crew and his cast. So he's very positive, very quiet, kind of gentle guy. He's not a big personality. He doesn't demand. He's not that kind of director. He's a cruise director. He's not a cruise director, but a cruise director. That he's a collaborator. Clearly, this is a movie built for Thanksgiving weekend. Like, if you ever wanted to make a movie about a dysfunctional family and then be able to take your own dysfunctional family to see it, it's this movie. It's a perfect family comedy. It's got something for everybody. It's sort of like got every generation in it. It's beautiful to look at. It'll be visually thrilling. It's written well. It has great actors in it, and people are it's just that type of movie that's really fun to go see with your family.
When I think of like a whodunit genre, I usually think of something that's like a period piece and something, with an old guy with a monocle. And it's really interesting to see how kind of Rian, both in the script but also whilst filming it, has really, I feel, changed the perspective on that. The film, in the way that we shot it, is so elevated and stylistic, but it's also really relatable because it's set in a contemporary time period and all of the characters have contemporary views and are of a modern time. Knives Out is such an incredible ensemble piece, and when people go and see the film, I think everyone's going to take something different. Everyone's going to take something different away depending on who they are. There is just so much to enjoy about it, and I think so much to discover about it that I don't want to give anything away.
Elliot is a lieutenant detective, And we're sort of introduced to him when we start to get into the, so essentially he's questioned the family before and is determined that the manner of death is suicide, which he's convinced of when we meet him. And so his suspicions start to rise when he runs into Blanc, who's an old friend, who suspects that maybe there might be more to the story than that. And so we start to dive deeper, ask more questions, and I still think it's suicide. Elliot pretty much thinks that he's in control and has a pretty good grasp on what happened on that fateful night. And so he thinks that, you know, Benoit might be just a little bit, his presence is a bit redundant, but he's interested to see if, you know, his suspicions might not have some kind of truth to them. So because he trusts him, because he's such a prolific investigator. So bringing him on is sort of like, this is strange, not the way we usually do things, but he's badass, so we'll see. You're immediately put at ease because he's a very balanced human being on set, which isn't easy to achieve. It's a very high stress, oftentimes, environment, and he just finds a way to just swim in it like an Olympic swimmer in an Olympic pool. And so I think that makes everyone else feel confident and at ease. And he knows what his vision is and what he wants, which I think is great, because it makes you feel comfortable in being guided by the captain of the ship.
Tonally, what Rian has done with Knives Out is this incredible combination of great actors, this huge ensemble cast of really the best people in the world at their jobs, and pitting them against one another in this murder mystery setting. So, you know, it's you know, in a way, it's sort of you know, we watch these great movies that are about these teams, you know, whether it's, you know, superheroes or comedies about friends, and we're kind of taking that ensemble event that happens and maybe making it a little bit, I don't know, spooky or dangerous. Filmmaking is kind of like a benevolent dictatorship. You know, we, you know, somebody like Rian who writes and directs his own movies is really the boss and kind of sets the tone. And Rian has always been very good about setting a fun tone and a relaxed tone, and, you know, one where we're all literally on the same page. We all are sort of here because we read his script. Then we read the script and then we hang out with the guy and we're like, this guy's great. We can spend all the time in the world with him. And I think that kind of attitude is really contagious, and that's what we're all benefiting from. And then, you know, you get these incredible actors, and everyone is as good as they can be, and that becomes unifying. And then all of a sudden, you have somebody like Jaeden or somebody like Michael or Kay, you know, kind of running through this incredible cast of people who do span, you know, I don't know, 50 years of age. We all have this thing in common, which is that we love the movie and, you know, are good at their jobs, and they can connect on that.
Well, because I had been chewing on the story for so long, I had a lot of the big elements in place. So, but at the same time, you delve into it and you start working out all the details, and especially with something that's plotted like this, where with any whodunit, there's always kind of a labyrinth of following all these different characters and all the motives and the twists and turns and what do you know when. So there's, even if you have the basic structure of it, there's a lot of math that you still have to do. And then making it fun, you know, that was the other big thing for me, is tonally I wanted this to be a fun movie. And so that makes it even harder when you have all this information you have to get across in a very specific way, and you want to make that kind of invisible so the audience is just being taken along on this fun ride, and the experience of it for them is obviously what the whole thing is about. I've kind of learned to not write with casts in mind, because you always get your heart broken because inevitably they're not available. And in this case, so I didn't have anyone in my head, and I was kind of astounded by the cast we were able to get. I mean, it all started with Daniel Craig. He was the first one to sign on, and he had a little window before he had to go into the next James Bond movie. And so once he was in it, yeah, we suddenly had a start date, and then all these great actors just started pouring in. It was kind of overwhelming. The real thing I was coming into, just in terms of someone who loves the genre, is how do I have my cake and eat it too? How do I try and get the mechanics of a thriller to carry us through the bulk of the film, and yet still have the pleasure of the big. I wanted a library scene at the end where they lays the whole thing out. I wanted the questioning at the beginning. I wanted the eccentric detective. I wanted all the stuff that I love about it. How do you do that and still give the thing an engine that, to me, is satisfying and really pulls you through in movie language? So in terms of coming into it, it wasn't some idea of like reinventing a genre or anything like that. It was just, how do I do a great whodunit? And to me, that was kind of the goal to aim for. Seeing it with a crowd, seeing it, feeling the energy in the theater, and feeling the audience respond to what the actors are giving out, that kind of joy, along with the mystery elements, along with with hopefully the gasps and the revelations and the twists and turns, and the ending, I think, is something you're going to want to see surrounded by a big group of people. In that way, it's kind of the flip side of a horror movie. You're going to get a reaction from the audience in this movie. It's not going to be a passive experience. And the bigger and the louder the audience is, the more fun you're going to have.
One of the things I love about Rian's take on the whodunit is how many twists there are. Like, you see a lot of movies and they'll have like one big twist. With Knives Out, there's just one after the other, and any sort of loose thread that you think is nothing, it all becomes something in the movie. Like any little clue, like a little throwaway thing, a note, a thing, like you're like, oh, that's just a scene, and then by the end, everything's woven together in this sort of masterful puzzle.
When I read Knives Out, I was enthralled. I loved the script so much. I loved all the characters. It's so precise and whip smart and idiosyncratically alive. And I guess I love my character, Joni. I play a Californian, well, I should say, I was married to Harlan, the patriarch's son, called Neil. Neil died 15 years ago, but my daughter Meg and I are still very much a part of the family. I'm a Californian woman, very Californian, and I guess, for want of a better term, am a lifestyle guru. Yes, and just full of contradictions, and having lived in LA for several years, some very kind of familiar vibrations. You can just tell how smart Rian is when you read the script. I mean, he has such a handle on the story, and it's jam-packed. There's so much that happens. It's really a game of snakes and ladders, and it's so complicated, but it's also warm, and it's moving, and it's tongue-in-cheek and hilarious. And there are just so many moving parts, and he's just got a handle on this whole world. And it's fun, and it's a bit of a romp, but it's also got some real meaning in there. And I always find family dynamics really interesting, and this family, doesn't disappoint. I was also kind of looking for a little bit of a crack of where the others might not see Joni as a real part of the family, but actually they always really do embrace her. So she does feel very much entrenched in the family, and she's, desperately upset when Harlan dies, but all of the characters are living off him and his finances. So she's just as dependent on him, and her world is about to fall apart when she realizes she's not going to get any kind of inheritance. I mean, he warns her even before he dies, and I think he's come to a point in his life where he's trying to make his family grow, make them kind of wake up and live and sort themselves out and not just rely on him. So I think Joni's just as in the dark about everything as everybody else, and it's a really confusing time, a really confronting time. And when things are that desperate, it does become quite humorous.